Now, for the last couple of years, the car industry has been an absolute mess. And before COVID and everything like that, I hope you're allowed to say that on YouTube now. But before COVID, it was normal, and we would have called that something like a buyer's market. Dealers were giving incentives to buy cars, interest rates weren't absolutely awful, and there was no kind of major upward or downward pressure on the market. And for the last 3 years, it's been pretty bad for people wanting to buy cars. Now, before, right after COVID, around that time, cars were abhorrently expensive. Because of the chip shortage that was going on around the world, automakers were increasing the values of their new cars, which in turn increased the value of the used cars as well. So for around 2 to 3 years, we were in something you'd call a seller's market. And that's mainly due to, like I said, the chip shortage. What happened was new car production had to decrease because of the chip shortage, which meant the supply for new cars had dropped. So more people were forced into buying used vehicles. Now, there's only so many used vehicles on the market, and because that demand skyrocketed, so did the price, which, supply, demand, simple economics. Now, today and over the last couple months, I'd say over the last year, something else has begun to happen. Interest rates to combat inflation in the United States have gone up. We're looking at 8, 9, 10, even 11 and 12% interest rates for people with credit scores 700 and above, which is unheard of before this crazy time that we're in now. I mean, could you imagine getting a 10% interest rate after you've worked so hard to get an 800 credit score? Well, it's pretty bad. And that doesn't only extend to just the automotive industry, that goes over into homes as well. People are paying 7-8% on their mortgages. But because of that interest rate increase, we have seen some pretty interesting things happen now, because less people are buying cars because they don't want to pay abhorrent interest when they go to buy a car. What's happened is now the downward pressure has begun, and it has become a buyer's market, because now dealers can't move cars. And since the chip shortage isn't as bad as it used to be, new car lots are now filling up, and used car lots are starting to decline in inventory, which means dealers are starting to offer incentives again and everything like that, because again, interest rates gone up, demand is down. It is now a buyer's market again, because dealers are desperate to sell their cars. So I'm going to be giving you 5 of my biggest predictions for 2024 and beyond, going into the future of the automotive industry. Slow growth ahead, definitely going to be something. Now, slow growth ahead, that is going to be, I think, more focused on the automakers themselves. What's happened is, like I said, demand for the automakers have gone down. Ford has seen record low sales over the last decade. They're not really selling cars, for example, and that really extends the brand as a whole. And there are certain car types in those model lineups that are having trouble being sold. Coupes, for example, are at an all-time sales low right now, while SUVs are still maintaining, a decent level, because that is the most popular vehicle type in the United States today. But yes, I believe there's going to be slow growth for these automakers going forward. I don't think it's going to be as bad as a recession, because this isn't 2008. I mean, the credit is not as bad as it was, 14 years ago, 15, 16 years ago when all that happened. But I definitely think there's going to be some slower growth for the automotive companies. If you're invested in them, please don't expect to see any kind of major growth like you saw back in 2021 and 2022. Because that was all inflated anyways, but I don't think anyone's going to be seeing some crazy stock gains when it comes to the, near distant future. Now, second on the list, of course, is going to be vehicles. The vehicle supply, of course, is going to come back, and it's going to be placing a downward pressure on the market. Like I said before, interest rates are at an all-time high right now. Like I said, we're looking at 8 to 12% with people with good credit scores. Now, the Federal Reserve has said that they're about to do 4 drops over, I think, an extended period of time. They're going to be doing 4 interest rate drops to kind of steady out the way money is being traded right now, because it is abhorrently high. I mean, I think M4 has a 10% interest rate on it, which is absolutely degrading. And I'm not a bad credit risk, so that's, put it that way. But anyways, I digress. So you're going to just see a massive decrease in car prices altogether, just because the demand right now is so low, and automotive companies, dealerships, whether you use car lot or a franchise or whatever you are, they're just not going to be seeing the growth they used to, and the prices of cars are just going to be in the toilet for the next couple of years, I think, at least, just because of how bad it is right now. Now, in 2024, 2025, 2026, I think going forward, and this is my third prediction, we're not going to be in a seller's market again for a distant while. The reason I say that is because over the last 3 years, especially with COVID and everything, it's been pretty terrible. I'm not going to say that the chip shortage can't come back or re-rise. We're seeing a lot of, advancements in technology right now that require more chips for, graphics cards and everything like that. So the chip shortage might return in the future when we've gotten to a point where we just need to pump out computers. But I think for right now, because, everything is coming back, the seller's market is just completely going away. And we're not going to be having one for a distant while, which kind of lumps into point number one and number two there. We're just not going to be in a seller's market anymore. Now, here's going to be my next prediction, and this has to do with EVs and renewable energy cars. Basically, what's going to happen with EVs, I think, is this. I think the craze with EVs in the beginning was kind of, crazy. You've seen a lot of brands over the last couple years, 2022, 2023, and going into 2024, you've seen a lot of brands do some pretty crazy stuff with EVs. Tesla, of course, was the one who pioneered that entire trend. Ford shortly after that with things like the Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning. And now you have companies like Hyundai doing it with the Ioniq series. The Hyundai Ioniq series, you're going to have the Kia EV series. Now you have BMW doing it with the I line of models, which they just revived over the last 2 years. You have Mercedes with the EQ line. You have all of these brands now reviving and creating electric vehicle lines. And the problem with that is, and that I've noticed is they're not necessarily all selling that well. Now, I will give companies like Hyundai and Kia that. They are selling those cars like hotcakes. You see them all over the place. The presence of EVs in the world has definitely increased over the last couple of years. And that's because there are some genuinely good products on the road. But for companies like, I don't want to name them, but it's 4 letters and starts with F, they're not selling necessarily that well. And as a guy who worked for that company, I like the Mach-E in spirit. And I love the Lightning in spirit. They look cool, they are fast, but Ford seems to be having trouble selling those things, which is kind of iffy. I think EVs will definitely start to increase on the road for their presence, but I definitely think the trend of them, growing as fast as they were, I think we're going to see a slowdown in how much EVs are sold. I think people are starting to realize that gas cars are just fine, and they are cheaper in a lot of ways than if you're Elon and you price your Tesla Model 3 at $28,000. Good for him, by the way. Makes cars affordable. But that goes into my next point, and I want to talk about something that a lot of you probably either aren't following in the industry or a lot of you kind of written off. So basically, there's this technology called hydrogen, and this is actually starting to gain some traction again. Now, Toyota came out with their hydrogen car. I don't remember what it's called, but it was a hydrogen sedan a couple years ago. And basically, the problem with it, other than it did have pretty decent range, and hydrogen to fill it up wasn't super bad, especially because Toyota was giving you tax credits and everything. Thanks, Evo. The Toyota Mirai. Basically, Toyota was selling this hydrogen car a couple of years ago. And when they did sell this hydrogen car, and I believe it was only available in California, they would give you hydrogen credits to basically go to hydrogen fuel pumps, and basically you got hydrogen for free, is the gist of it. Now, I say that because there's been a transactionary relationship in between Toyota and, lo and behold, BMW. What happened is that BMW gave them an amazing engine, the B58 for the Mark V Supra. Now, in return, there were some things Toyota gave BMW. One of them is their hydrogen technology. Now, there has been rumors and speculation that companies like BMW are going to be stepping back on their EV production and focusing a little more on hydrogen, most from BMW being the BMW X5 Hydrogen. To my knowledge, and I'm not the expert on this subject, but to my knowledge, it is cheaper, I believe, for these companies to retrofit their current vehicles with hydrogen setups rather than completely redesign them from the ground like they've done with the I-Series. So I do think that hydrogen vehicles are going to be seeing some kind of uprise. I don't want to say resurgence because they were never really around in the first place, but a resurgence. And I think that technology is really going to be increasing, especially because people kind of swear by this stuff. Like the people who really believe in hydrogen love hydrogen. It's weird. I mean, I know that they get great gas mileage, and I know that they're not too expensive to retrofit onto current cars, but like hey, who doesn't want to see a couple hydrogen vehicles on the road? We have gas, electric. Why not throw hydrogen into the mix? Next, it'll be nuclear. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to be talking about, and it has to come with all of you car enthusiasts out there. This is going to be affecting you. I know we all love the manual transmission. It's fantastic. But I think the days of brands producing vehicles, performance or not, with manual transmissions is far behind us on a large scale, at least in the United States. I know in Europe it's a lot more popular. Any of our European viewers, please don't hate me for this, but the United States is a lot different when it comes to that stuff. I know in Europe, it's very popular for people to learn how to drive their first car using a 6-speed or a 5-speed manual instead of, a normal automatic transmission. But in the United States, most cars, 95% of cars on the road here are going to be automatics, which for the layman, normal person out there, that's fine. Most performance cars now are automatic only if you get certain models of them. Mercedes, for example, doesn't even make a manual transmission car anymore. And they haven't in a long while. But the thing is with that is, I think out of sake of performance and decreasing the cost of production because they won't need to have multiple transmission options, I think we're going to see kind of a disappearance of the manual transmission altogether within the next couple of years. I think there are brands out there who make pony cars and everything, Ford, for example, who will not be getting rid of it, especially because they just released the S650 Mustang. But I think for most brands, manual transmissions are going to become a thing of the past very soon, which is sad because they're always fun to drive. You're going to have to do buying them used. You already have to basically look for a needle in a haystack now to buy a manual car new. So it's just going to be that way. Unfortunately, car enthusiasts, things that car enthusiasts like, are kind of dying just because that stuff is things automakers don't really care about. But yeah, those are my 5 predictions for the car industry for 2024 going into 2025. I hope you guys liked the video. Make sure to hit that like button down below. I'll see you all in the next